where faith, culture, and politics collide. This is Give Me Liberty Media. This is the Tyler Morgan Show on Relentless Daring Media Network. Welcome back to Land of Bourbon and Bad Decisions. This is the Tyler Morgan Show live on twitch.tv/Tyler Morgan Show, or maybe you're checking this out later on YouTube, youtube.com/@the Tyler Morgan Show, or checking this out on podcast, any of the traditional or even some of the newer podcast platforms. You find me there: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible. If it plays podcasts, you can probably find me. This is a special show. I am joined by Laura Whittington. She is a curator for Twitchy, and she is the host of Front Porch Forensics on KLRN Radio. And we've both had some opinions and thoughts on the school shooting that happened in Georgia last week. While I was doing my show, while I was preparing for my show over the weekend, she was already doing her show and discussing basically the same thing. So I asked her if she would come on and, we could bounce a few ideas off each other. Laura, welcome to the Land of Bourbon and Bad Decisions.
I'm actually very happy to be here. I still love that tagline.
I do too. So, yeah. So we live in America. America has a lot of people and a lot of guns, and
more people than guns, I believe.
More guns
than people. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw a TikTok video where they were discussing countries and their gun to people ratio. And it's like, oh, I have 5 guns per 100 people. I have 20 guns per 100 people. Then it gets to America and it's like, I have 123. No. Yeah. This is per 100 people. Yeah. We have 123 guns per 100 people.
Yeah, we're definitely outgunned in the country.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with the amount of guns we have, there is going to be gun violence. Just like with the number of cars in America, there's going to be fatal traffic accidents. Sometimes one person, kills himself in a random accident on the road. Sometimes a drunk driver takes out a whole family.
Right.
But, no one ever talks about, we need to take away all the cars.
No, and that's the same thing. I mean, the more people who have like swimming pools, the more drowning incidents we're going to have. Mm-hmm. You increase the number of anything and, the fatality rate, the risk is going to go up for that. That's just kind of the way that works.
Right. And I think one of the big problems that no one really focuses on in the current American society, because you have the people pulling up, well, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we didn't have this big of a problem. So, well, over the last 30 to 40 years, our society has become way more nihilistic, where lives do not have the same meaning to everybody that they once had.
Yeah, there used to be a culture of, human life has value. It is inherently valuable, and we are lacking that in today's society.
Yeah, and so with that, human life has no value, and this can gets extended, even into the abortion debate with what life has value to whom. And overall, when you start seeing these mass shootings, one of the big things that people really start noticing is that many of these mass shooters are really deep in the throes of nihilism. Their lives don't matter. Other people's lives don't matter. The whole world doesn't matter. And with nihilism comes a lot of depression, and depression leads to suicide and lashing out. And they want to take as many people with them as they can.
Well, in mass shootings, I think there was a study done on it. It said, like, suicides are overwhelmingly like premeditated. They are planned ahead. And, you know, mass shootings typically are too. They're not typically done in the heat of the moment. So you kind of combine the two, which I call any mass shooting a performative suicide, because this person typically has absolutely no intention whatsoever of surviving the act. They typically do not turn themselves in. They either take themselves out or it's suicide by cop. So they're performative suicides effectively.
Right. And because in the last 10 years or so, if you look at mass shootings in general, not just school shootings, the number of shooters who have been captured. I mean, the kid in Georgia was captured successfully, and the Parkland shooter was captured. And honestly, I can't think of any more who were successfully captured after conducting a mass shooting.
I said the Charleston shooter, I know they found him at home, but he turned himself in peacefully. But
oh yeah,
those are kind of the rare ones.
The guy who shot the church,
yeah, those are kind of the rare ones. I mean, most of the time, somebody who plans to do this does not plan to survive it themselves.
And this is one of those, and it can even be linked to a lot of the similar motivations as spree killers. Where
there is a difference, which I always tell people, between a mass murder, spree murders, and serial murders. I mean, the most common, or the one that I think most people know about, would be serial murders. But that's usually, you know, you've got 3 or more victims with a cooling off period in between them. It's usually done, it can be, you know, weeks at a time, it can be months at a time, or sometimes even years at a time. Those are your serial murders. Your spree murders are 3 or more victims, typically in more than one location, but within a quick amount of time, like probably within hours, or I mean, I think they even count a couple of days maybe between them as part of a spree. But mass murder, obviously, there's no set definition for this one, and I wish there was, but mass murder is usually when you get 3 or more victims in one location in one event.
Right. And like I said, I'm just not saying they're the same. I'm just kind of making a generalization between the two of mass and spree, and that
Right.
with spree killings, again, there's this very mission focused. I'm going to take as many people as I can, and I'm either going to kill myself when I'm done, or the cops will kill me at some point during the spree. I mean,
Yeah.
you look at the guy who killed Versace. I mean,
Right.
his killing spree was over what? He killed people in 4 states before he finally killed Versace, and then
And
ended
wasn't
up
he
killing himself.
traveling like to get to Versace? He was traveling from one place to another and just happened to be killing people on his way to kill Versace.
Yeah, and as opposed to, say, a serial killer, which at first that's what they thought it was, but because a couple of the victims were similar to the first person he killed, where that he was a rich guy with lots of money that he could, you know, and that he could use to further what he needed to do. And so they thought, okay, maybe that's this motivation, because his first victim was actually a lover of his. So they thought maybe the second guy, the same thing. It wasn't until a groundskeeper for a golf course, this poor guy, he was killed for his pickup truck. They said, okay, this is definitely not uh, a serial killing. This is something different,
Right.
because he literally just killed the guy for his truck. But at the same time, it's John Douglas, the one of the original, mind hunters, the FBI profilers.
Yeah, he and
He
a wrestler, Robert Wrestler. They were the ones that kind
mm-hmm,
of pioneered the whole criminal profiling division.
right, and he had a classification for this type of person as an assassin type, where they're purely driven by, I'm going to do this regardless of the outcome. And that's really seems to be the mindset of a lot of these mass and spree killers, where I like the Uvalde shooter. He was involved in, a high speed chase and shootout with the cops before he even got into the school. He
I
knew
mean,
where
how
he
they
was
don't
going.
like, how they don't like stop this at that moment is beyond me.
Yeah, and it's really just hard to fathom, and how some of these things happen, where especially these ones who end up being, what I call a known wolf. At some point, law enforcement has picked them up on their radar. And I get it. This is America. This isn't minority report. You can't arrest people for future crimes. Yet for
Okay, if
some,
you have to have evidence, like solid evidence, that they are actually planning to carry out a crime in order to arrest them for that. I mean, that's conspiracy crimes. So, but you have to have
right,
that evidence before you can do anything.
right. And this is one of those times where, like, with the so I'm not going to say any of these shooters' names. They get enough press as it is, so I'm not going to contribute to their infamy,
That's actually
because
what I always say too.
that's
I
a
said it on our show
that's
Saturday
like
night.
that's a secondary motive. That is a secondary motive for, if they survive, they want to know that they will be forever associated with this body count.
Well, specifically, that's very, very common among school shooters. And, school shootings are just a subset of mass shootings.
Mm-hmm.
But overwhelmingly, school shooters are the kids who feel disenfranchised. They're bullied. They feel invisible. They're alone. This is their way of being seen. Oh, be quiet.
Right. And I know it, like I said, it's their way of being seen. That way, that's how they make their mark. But my train of thought has derailed. Um, but I don't like to give them any additional credit.
Yeah, Daniel's walking the door, so our dogs are hyper. Yeah, I will not. You will not hear me name a shooter either, because there's actually a and I want to say it was either after a school shooting or the Aurora, Colorado shooting, where the families of one of the victims started like no notoriety or something, where they say, stop using their names in the news, in the media, politicians, stop using their names.
Yeah, and this goes to something I said on my show on Saturday, is that there is no greater evidence for social contagion than what happens following school shootings. Because when you see one suicide turn to 2 to 3 to 5, and you see a spate of suicides in a geographical area because everyone's talking about it, because it's on social media, it's on the news, it's in the newspapers, it's what the community's talking about. The same thing happens with school shootings where it's just everywhere. And then you get that disenfranchised kid who says, wow, look at the attention that person's getting.
And
That's
they
that
overwhelmingly
seems
they study each other too. I mean, the kid in Georgia just last week, the search history on his computer, he was looking up the Columbine shooting, he was looking up Sandy Hook, like he was studying these other school shooters and everything. They learn by doing this. They learn what keeps them in a news cycle. They learn what gets that notoriety, what gets that infamy for the other shooters. So they're like, okay, well, if I do this too, then that's what's going to keep me in the news. And that's also why we see the left and the Democrats going after the AR-15 rifle. And it's overwhelmingly their own fault. They have turned this weapon into this talisman like object that appeals to these unstable people already. And they know that if I use that weapon, they're not going to shut up about me.
right. And, and they, when it comes to the AR-15, I have never seen worse fear mongering over an underpowered weapon before in my life. And
Oh, I know. I mean, you get people all the time saying, if you need an AR-15 to hunt with, like, you must be a bad shot or something. This weapon in a lot of states is prohibited from being used for hunting deer because it's not powerful enough to take down a deer cleanly.
yeah, in Missouri, the 223 Remington is considered too small for deer hunting. You can use it for coyotes, any other kind of varmint hunting.
Yeah, very, very
Eh,
small game. It's a varmint gun. That's what I always call it. I mean, we have one. Well, we have a few, but I mean, we overwhelmingly use them in case because we get coyotes up here on the mountain all the time, and we don't want them coming after our dogs or anything.
Yeah, and if you ask any soldier who's ever carried an M4 in combat, well, ask anyone who is not politically motivated towards the left, when they've seen enemy combatants get hit multiple times with this little tiny round and they do not go down, or they go down, they get back up, they'll tell you it's like, yeah, the biggest portion damage internally is from the bullet tumbling. But when you hear, yeah, I remember seeing an article, I don't remember where it was, where a doctor, a literal trauma doctor, was talking about how organs are just blown out of the body by these AR-15s. I'm just like,
Oh, I know exactly the article you're talking about. People cite
and I'm
that to
just
me
like,
all the time
I
too.
was like, are they using illegal dum-dum rounds that have like nitroglycerin in the tip? I mean, what's going on
Either
here?
that, it's either that, or my thought is, okay, this doctor doesn't work in an area where he sees a lot of gunshot wounds because gunshot wounds are nasty. They're ugly. I mean, it's horrific. And I always tell people, like, why do you see shotgun wounds?
Yeah. And I have, and this is an Afghan war story. I have seen Afghan police who were ambushed in the local bazaar, and they were brought to the aid station on our little base to get medevaced out with literal AK-47 bullet holes in their face. And you'd be amazed at how much Hollywood has influenced what people think happens.
Oh, Hollywood video games. I mean, the
Yeah, it's
influence is
like
there. It's just not accurate.
I saw an AMP officer with he got shot in the head with an AK-47. He was still alive. That is a 30 caliber bullet. It is considerably bigger than a 5.56 or 223. And it's like he was not gushing blood and all this. And I remember looking at it and going, huh, Hollywood said it'd be worse than this.
I mean, I've seen cases where people survive a gunshot wound and everything because the bullet has actually kind of traveled between the brain and the skull and just kind of got lodged there, but kind of circles around. It follows just the path of the skull. Hasn't pierced the brain. I mean,
yeah, I mean, that's one thing a lot of people don't understand when it comes to ballistics. And you can quote me on this. Bullets do weird things when they enter the human body. They don't always perform the way when you see a bullet shot into ballistic gel or into a ballistic dummy that's got, artificial bones and stuff in it.
right. Those are merely a way to kind of give you an idea of, what the bullet could do. But again, every single time you shoot, even at a ballistics dummy or in a ballistics gel or something like that, every single shot is going to be slightly different than the one before it.
Yeah.
They're not always going to be perfectly in line and exact and identical.
Yeah. And it's like, I remember right after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, Brandon Herrera on his YouTube channel, him and a bunch of the guys who do the unsubscribed podcast with him, they attempted to recreate that shot. Now, they knew that the shooter got damn lucky that he even nicked Donald Trump's ear with the setup that he had.
Right.
So, using a really good scope with the rifle and a lead sled, they got a bead on the ear, and they put the bullet through the ear, and then the left, and they saw the video go up on Twitter. See, you could tell Donald Trump didn't get shot because his ear didn't do that. It's like, well, that's gel. It's not a human ear with cartilage and skin and flesh. It doesn't act the exact same way. That's an analog.
Right.
But
yeah, those conspiracy theorists right now have been cracking me up.
oh my gosh, it was staged.
My favorite one right now is the
They
comparison
wounded
to
2
Evander
people and killed
Holyfield.
1 more to stage it.
My favorite one right now is the comparison to Evander Holyfield.
Wait, did Mike Tyson run up there and bite Donald Trump's ear off? Did I miss that?
That's why it cracks me up. I'm like, okay, biting somebody is going to be a different wound than like a bullet grazing you. So I don't know how you're comparing these things.
I remember watching that fight as a kid. There was way more blood on Evander Holyfield's face than even Donald Trump's.
These people are they're absolutely insane. I mean, the left is going to bend over backwards to deny reality. I mean, even when it's staring them right in the face.
Right. And, going back to something you said earlier, that you like to refer to these shootings as performative suicides.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened last week was the Tennessee Star was able to get a hold of the evidence photos of the manifesto. I use that in air quotes because manifestos typically have a point. They may be disjointed. They may be a little far-fetched, but they have a point. And the shooter's manifesto didn't seem like much of an actual manifesto because like more than half the pages in it, and the 90 pages in this journal that was recovered out of her car, over half of them had the words, "I want to die, please kill me," or something along that variant scrawled in huge letters on the pages.
Yeah. This actually ties in 2 points. One specifically about transgender people, but the other about, that also ties into feeling disenfranchised and everything. And so the first point will be the transgender community after transitioning is 19 times more likely to kill themselves than
Right.
any of their peers. And this is after transitioning. That was a 30-year Swedish study that proved that. And then the second one, you get this disenfranchisement, and particularly from the left, because they're telling everybody, like, oh, okay, well, they say that, you're mentally ill and everything. Basically, they don't want you to exist. They're trying to eradicate you. It's a genocide. These people are out to get you. You put that in the mind of somebody who is already unstable, already wants to die. And so they're going to start thinking, okay, well, I might as well take out a few of them with me when I go.
Yeah. And I know there has been some Twitter conspiracy on the right looking at pictures of the shooter because he's got long hair. I'm like, I'm ignoring that stuff because I have two teenage boys. One's
That's
a senior in
exactly what
high
I
school.
thought.
One's a senior in high school. The other is a sophomore in high school. Guess what their hair is?
Yeah, I mean,
Long. Does that mean
every
they're
time
transitioning? I mean,
every time we pick up the tiny tyrant from school, like I just want to like yell at these boys, like, "Hey, do you need a hairbrush? I've got a hairbrush in my car."
oh yeah, and their hair is the exact same way his was in the mugshot, where it's like, dude, brush your hair for Pete's sake. But
Yeah, but I mean, that I think
I
that's pretty
I'm
typical of
just
a
glad that
14-year-old
I'm
boy.
I'm just glad that neither my son or my nephew are like total hillbillies and doing what the total hillbillies in my area do when they get in high school and start growing the mullet.
Now, see, the boy that the tiny tyrant has a crush on, he actually did have a mullet, and I don't know why that thing's coming back.
I know that's the social contagion. They see Morgan Wallen. Morgan Wallen had the Kentucky waterfall going. All the teenage boys start growing the mullet, and then when he shaves his head, they don't follow suit. The little bastards.
Well, that could just be a trend thing too. I mean, bell bottoms came back into style, but then they called them just flare leg at that point.
Yeah,
They came back, so I guess it's time for the mullet to make its comeback, and hopefully it'll die out fairly soon too.
yeah, and going back to the trans thing, um, this is a point that I've been making for several years. There is a verified in the DSM-5 mental health disorder called, was it dissociative or
Gender dysphoria. I have the
no, it's
DSM-5.
not gender dysphoria. Body ident
Body
body
dysmorphic,
integrity
dysmorphic.
body integrity identity disorder, where, and this is a thing where, you know, you have a traumatic experience, and in your mind, to help you cope with that experience, your mind is telling you you should have lost your arm, you should have lost your leg, whatever. And people who suffer with it, they will go and not use that arm. They will get a wheelchair and, not use, that way they don't have to use the leg that they swear to God they lost. This is not my leg. Doctor, you need to cut my leg off. This is not my leg. We don't treat that disorder by removing viable limbs.
Exactly. It's almost the same way you could add in like especially anorexics and bulimics. Usually
Yeah.
that is triggered by maybe it's I think most commonly triggered by early sexual like childhood sexual abuse. And we do not tell these people that, oh yes, okay, you are exactly how you see yourself. You're fat. We're going to give you gastric bypass surgery. We don't do that
Yeah.
because we know it will kill them.
Yeah. And it's like, so my wife, she lost a lot of weight, and, she literally wears like a size 0, size 2 jeans after having used to wear a size 18. Right. And
That's serious weight loss too. So congratulations to her, by the way.
yeah, yeah. And she'll have times where she's like, I feel fat. I'm like, babe, look at me. We've been married for 21 years. You are not fat. And you and that's the affirmation that people need, not the negative affirmation of, yeah, you're fat, you need to do something about that. And it's the same thing with, gender affirmation. It's like, no, you're not affirming gender, you are affirming mental illness.
And I think too, a lot of today's quote unquote transgender people, they're not actually transgender. This is also a social contagion. This is a
Mhm.
way for these people who don't I mean, I was a tomboy growing up. I mean, I'm still today not the stereotype of a feminine woman, but I don't have people in my ear saying, "Oh, well, that means you should have been a boy, like you were born in the wrong body." No, this is the body I got, so this is what I am. But all these kids now are being told that this is like the trendy thing to do. If you don't necessarily feel feminine or you don't feel masculine, okay, that must mean you have been born in the wrong body. We're telling them there's something wrong with them when nothing is actually wrong with them.
Right. And I think one of the big issues that's been looked into is a lot of, uh, you know, at least in the last probably 5 years ago, not so much now where it has become very social contagion. Um, but 5 years ago, one of the big things was it was people who were having questions about their sexuality and oh my god, I'm a woman, I am attracted to women, but the, they start having a serious identity crisis in it, and then they transition to match that sexual attraction
Well, I think too
where
a lot of that there's still among some social circles some stigma attached to being gay.
yeah,
So a guy that thinks, "Oh my God, well I'm attracted to men," that must mean I'm actually a woman. They're trying to do this in their mind so that they can say, "Well, I'm not gay, I'm heterosexual,"
right,
because there's
and
that stigma. They don't want the stigma that comes with being homosexual.
right, and like I said, in this, because there were studies done on these people who were they were young adults, and they went through therapy and this, that, and the other, and they make it through this crisis point in their life, and they come out the other side as, well, okay, I am a man, but I'm gay, or I am a woman, I'm just a lesbian, and they find acceptance in who they are, and that is, I think, one of the biggest things when it comes to, affirmative care, is that we are affirming the wrong things. I I do not think it's wrong to affirm that a person has feelings like this, that, hey, I feel like I'm in the wrong body. Okay, I'm going to affirm that you have these feelings. Let's talk about it. And
Right.
and
Just don't
and
affirm
get
that
them
those
to,
feelings are true.
yeah, I mean, you can't treat a schizophrenic person by telling them the voices in their head are fake. It's going to make them not trust you as a treatment professional. You have to recognize that, well, like, I as a professional know that this is a hallucination, but to them it is real, and I need to help them deal with their reality. And
So you have to help them kind of shift into understanding this is just in your mind. These voices aren't real. But yeah, just coming out and saying that is going to immediately turn them off. They're just going to stop listening at that point.
yeah, but
So you do have to
instead,
find a way to work towards it to get them to a healthy point where they can understand, okay, this is happening inside my head. I need to find these coping mechanisms to help me figure out what is real and what is not.
yeah, I mean, be like, I have PTSD, I have depression. When before I was diagnosed with my depression, when I first started talking to a psychiatrist about it and getting treatment, if the psychiatrist had said, "Oh no, you really are worthless. Here's some things you can do to make sure the rest of your family never has to deal with you again," that would not have been helping me.
Right.
I mean, but we look at doctors who see a patient and go, "Oh no, yeah, you are definitely in the wrong body. Here, let's start you on this course in medicine that's going to completely alter and destroy the way your body was designed. That way you can feel better about yourself."
There
I
was
mean, that's
recently a death of a transgender person. It was a woman who was transitioning to be a man, and all over her Instagram and everything, you see her posting about these major, major health problems she had gone through. I mean, she even went through like the whole bottom surgery and everything. Like
Mm-hmm.
she went the full 9 yards with it. And I mean, she was having like heart attacks by the time she was before she was 30 and all this kind of stuff. And she has actually died now.
Oh yeah, because a lot of people don't really think about how you know for a woman how the hormones emitted by your ovaries affect the rest of your body.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean,
They,
it is a whole body thing.
yeah, I mean, like now with men, they people really they have an idea of how testosterone affects other parts of the body, but even then, it's a general idea. They don't know 100% what testosterone does to the male heart, to the male brain. It's like, well, it's a hormone, and we see that it does this, but we don't know what the actual function is. So yeah, if we put him on testosterone blockers, yeah, he'll be fine. I mean, it's
Yeah,
like, wait,
and
what?
that's the thing. And even giving women who identify as men, giving them this extra testosterone, it messes with our bodies in all sorts of different ways. Like if you've got a deficiency, like taking supplements for it is fine. That's pretty normal.
Right.
But when your testosterone levels are normal for you, adjusting them and all chemically altering them is going to have long term effects.
Yeah, I mean, all women have a little bit of testosterone in the system. So when you go and you block all their estrogen, progesterone, and the other hormones associated with femininity, and just replace it with androgen and testosterone, yeah, it's going to have a ridiculous effect, and not just on. It's going to make your voice lower and start sprouting facial hair.
Well, I think I heard a lot of people blaming the testosterone, the hormone replacement for the transgender shooter in Tennessee, was one of the reasons because women are not typically mass shooters. Women tend to turn
No,
their depression, what their issues, we tend to turn those inward onto ourselves. That's why women, if they are experiencing stuff like that, we typically commit suicide and just privately.
right?
Like we
Oh,
don't make a big spectacle about it.
I saw
But this
something.
girl, she did.
I saw something on Twitter that is just absolutely heartbreaking this morning. It was a woman who was transitioning, posted a picture post mastectomy, because I'm going to call it what it is, because I'm not a 2-year-old. It's not a top surgery. It's a mastectomy.
100%. It's a double mastectomy.
And she posts this picture of her mastectomy, and her whole upper body is covered with scars, because this is what my daughter would refer to as a quote barcode friend. I mean, she was a cutter. I mean,
Yeah.
she has self-inflicted mutilations, like a giant X carved into her chest, these massive scars on her biceps. It's just like, a doctor took a look at this during a physical exam and decided this surgery was a good idea.
Basically,
We're
basically,
going to we're
she
going to
got.
treat self-mutilation with more mutilation.
I was about to say, I mean, the self mutilation, they see all this and they're like, oh, okay, well, instead of you doing it, we'll just do it for you.
Yeah,
Like, what the
self-mutilation by
heck?
proxy.
Yeah. That's why
I
I think
mean,
a lot of these doctors need to come under investigation, too.
yeah, and it's so ridiculous though that in our society that we have gotten to a point where we will coddle mental health issues versus treating them. And then when someone with mental health issues does something spectacularly tragic, we're the left is just like, we don't know why he did this. It's the guns.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're causing this issue because it is mass shootings in particular are driven, we already know, by mental illness. These are mentally ill people. like 60 some odd percent of mass shooters were proven to either have been on some kind of psychiatric medication or had exhibited signs of major mental illness before they did what they did. And we're all just saying, okay, that's not a big deal. We don't need to worry about that. Nothing's going to happen. And I kind of get it, at least with school shooters, because no parent wants to believe that, your child is struggling that bad and they might actually end up doing something like that. But it's still something you just got to take seriously. You've got to get it checked out. Like, just, I know a lot of people, like to blame the parents and everything. And the one in Georgia, I got questions about him because he made some stupid decisions that me as a parent, I'm looking
Yeah.
at him like, what were you thinking? But I mean, until we
Like,
address
wait,
the mental
last
health
year
issue,
you and your kid got questioned by the
yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
the
I mean,
FBI shows up,
yeah,
tells the
I'm with you
dad and the
on the dad.
parents. Yeah, they tell him all this, or like, we know he's made threats to shoot up the school and everything. And what does the dad do? He buys his son an AR-15 for Christmas, and I'm like, why? What was going through your
Yeah,
mind here? Like, there's absolutely
I
no
know.
way. I
And
mean, if the FBI came to my house tomorrow and said, we have evidence that your daughter has been, saying that she wants to shoot up her school, she's making violent threats. Every gun in our house is either going to be like locked away somewhere or not in our home anymore. Like, I'm
oh,
going to do
I'm
everything in
cha-
my power to keep them away from her.
I'm changing the combination for my gun safe if I were to get a phone call like that and have to have a
Yeah.
conversation like that. But
But I mean,
yeah,
that's rational. But this guy, like, for some reason, he thought that was a good idea to buy his son the gun.
little Jimmy was just having a moment last spring. Here, buddy, have a gun.
I mean, the dad even said that, like, yes, I knew my son was being bullied. I knew all of this. He still buys him the gun. It's
Yeah,
unreal to me.
and
I cannot make that make sense in my brain.
there's starting to be some reports come out, and this is coming via social media, so veracity is questionable at best. That apparently the good guy in this messed up family, and the family is messed up. The dad has issues. The mom has a long history of drug abuse and spending time in jail for for drugs. They said they said veracity is questionable. That the mom actually called the school that morning and said, "Find him, check on him.
Oh, I had
Something
read
is
that
not
too.
right."
Yeah. Yeah, like 30 minutes before the incident, I think is what I heard, that she was calling and saying, "Hey, y'all need to check on this. Y'all need to go find my son."
Yeah, and it's like I I could not imagine how heartbreaking it would be, like, if she had gotten a text from him or something, whether it was, like one of those, suicide goodbyes,
Yeah.
and she's like, "Oh my god, my son's gonna go kill himself, go find him." And, and then you see this, and it's like, "I was trying to get him found before something happened." I could not imagine the level of heartbreak.
Yeah, that, I mean, as a parent, it's just, it boggles my mind.
And then this is the one thing I said on Twitter, and fortunately for me, I don't have a huge following on Twitter, but there hasn't been a whole lot of pushback. But I still think it's accurate when it comes to these mass shootings and school shootings, especially. The left absolutely loves a body count
Oh,
because because the bigger the body count, that's the more bodies they can stack to make a bigger soapbox.
they still
They
commemorate like Columbine and Parkland and stuff like that every year. I mean, just this past Valentine's Day, you know, the videos and everything were replayed from Parkland of kids, running out of the school building. And
yeah, yeah, it's just like
so I think the
it,
media, the Democrats, they're all complicit in these acts because they're doing exactly what the shooter wanted.
yeah, and at the same time, it's like I regardless of age, whether it is moments after conception to, 90-year-old lady at the shopping center who's in the wrong place at the wrong time. They love dead babies, period.
Yeah.
Because
it goes back to the very beginning, the devaluing human life. And, that's been, I guess, probably since about the 70s when, Roe was decided. Because now we've got like 50 plus years of this propaganda that they're not a human, they're not a child, it's just a clump of cells, there's nothing to worry about.
And it all comes back to the ultimate in devaluing life, and that is Karl Marx. I mean, Karl Marx had little to no use for any member of a communist society who could not produce more potatoes than they consumed.
Didn't he even celebrate like his own family members' deaths or something?
Oh, he drove his son-in-law and daughter to suicide. He's just like, meh.
Yeah, those people, I can't understand them. And I think that's my whole interest in everything true crime, because I've always been more into the psychological aspects of it. I need answers as to why these people are doing the horrific things that they do. Like, I need it to make sense for my own peace of mind. Like, if I have an answer, then, it's not as terrifying, because if there's an answer to why they're doing it, then there's a solution to why they're doing it too.
Yeah. So speaking of true crime, you and Bumpstock Ken, as he is affectionately known via the Twitters, have your show, Front Porch Forensics. Why don't you tell people about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I've been into true crime since childhood. Like, I knew Jeffrey Dahmer's address by the time I was 9 years old, which incidentally, is Daniel tells me, he always laughs and says, you're the reason your parents lock their door at night, right? Because I know, like, this almost scary amount of knowledge on serial killers and, other various cases and whatnot. So that's a lot of what we talk about. And it's not just serial killers that we talk about. I mean, we've done the mass shootings. We'll have an episode on cults sometime in the future, because those have always fascinated me. But just anything like that I can dig into, these awful things that happen in our world. If I can just kind of figure out why it happens. Like, we did Jeffrey Dahmer, and I went deep into a dive into his known psyche and everything. Edmund Kemper is going to be another one we do, because he was actually so intelligent that he kind of, as a teenager and, his younger incarcerated days when he killed his grandparents, he would get in good and kind of be friendly and make friends with the psychiatrists on staff. So they would actually like let him have the questionnaire that they would give to, some of the other juveniles that were in the facility with him. So now Kemper has got basically the cheat sheet, what they're looking for, what answers they're looking for. And he was able to kind of learn. And so they let him out of prison.
Yeah,
and then years later, I say it's funny, but it's kind of that dark humor. You kind of have to laugh at it. Otherwise, it's just too ugly. But years later, after he had killed 15-year-old Aiko Koo, this was actually when he was still on probation. Like, he was still having court-appointed psychiatric sessions and everything. The day that the two psychiatrists on staff cleared him and gave him glowing recommendations,
her body was in the car.
Her head was in his trunk.
Her head was in the trunk. Yeah. I was like,
the day that he was cleared by two psychiatrists that both said he's not a danger to himself or others. He had already killed multiple women before this, and he had a 15-year-old girl's head in his trunk in the parking lot.
Yeah, I remember. I don't have time to read, but I listen to a ton of audiobooks. And so I've listened to Mind Hunters by John Douglas, and
that's fantastic.
And I've listened to one of Robert Ressler's books, and a few others who are involved heavily in the FBI's criminal profiling program. and heard multiple times. It's like I can almost see the internal faces that they were making, because they talk about when they do these interviews that they cannot react.
Yeah, they're not supposed to let anything show on their face.
I can almost see their internal faces when Kemper is talking about that, and how he's just kind of chuckling in that big gentle giant way of his.
Yeah, I mean, when he called to turn himself in, the cops thought he was joking because, like, he had
what Big Ed? No, Big Ed couldn't have done this.
Like, he was friendly with them. He went to the cop bar, the hangout with them and everything after hours. Like, they all knew him. So when he called in, they were like, "Oh, you're pulling our leg, aren't you?" They did not believe him at first. But speaking of audiobooks, another fun fact is Edmund Kemper actually did record audiobooks for the blind while he was in prison.
And who says that a serial killer cannot do something altruistic?
So I don't know if it's altruistic or maybe just a way
He's
for him
bored.
to feel like he's still affecting people,
Yeah, that'd just be like the weirdest thing to stumble across a set of books on tape narrated by Edmund Kemper.
Oh, I'm still trying to find some because I have that natural curiosity, so I'm still on the lookout.
You're probably scouring the internet for paintings from Gacy, aren't you?
Oh, I found some, but they are super expensive these days.
Oh,
Now, I do have the t-shirt that was made for Ted Bundy's execution, and I have the one for Gacy's.
Now, those are some interesting collectibles.
Yeah, there's actually a website. You can get like the recreations of them, like just their prints of them. But it's like truecrimecollective.com, I think. But they've got some really interesting stuff there. I think they actually do even have some recreations of some of Gacy's paintings.
Yeah, I can't believe, though. It's like I understand the fascination with mass killers and serial killers from the general population, because it is such a abhorrent thing and such an anomalous thing that it captures people's attention. And people just want to understand what would drive a person to do it. But I don't know if I'm at the point where I would be seeking out memorabilia.
I have to tell people all the time, like, I'm not one of those serial killer groupies. It's not the killer himself or necessarily what he did. I just need to comprehend the why of it. Like, I've spent my childhood and everything else. My fascination has always been with the why. Like, I've got books on my bookshelf in the bedroom on criminal profiling, forensic psychology, all that kind of stuff, because that's where my fascination lies with this.
Right. Well, Laura, it has been great talking to you tonight about such a wide range of issues that can
absolutely.
We kind of went down some rabbit trails, but we found our way back to where we wanted to be. Thank you again for coming on my wee little show and sharing your time with me. It's great. It means a lot. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
All right. Great. Hope to have you on again on another topic. Thank you very much.
Bye.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye. All right. So that's going to wrap it up with Laura Whittington. You can follow her on Twitter at Bump Stock Barbie, and check out her podcast. I said it like three or four times. Front Porch Forensics, where her and her husband go through and talk about a number of things related to serial killers, mass killers. Like she said, she's going to get into cults here in the future. And like I said, if you're on Twitter, she's a great follow. lots of snark, and I'm all here for it. Check her out. Again, thank you so much for listening. And as always, stay relentless. The Tyler Morgan Show is a Relentless Daring media production. The Tyler Morgan Show is supported by its listeners. To support the show, go to ko-fi.com/Tyler Morgan Show to donate there, or relentlessdaring.com and hit the donate button at the top of the page to set up your donation. All music used in the Tyler Morgan Show is used with permission from purpleplanet.com, link in the show notes. 2 Timothy 1:7.